Hello, hello, welcome to Real Savvy, a show of updates and absolutely no outtakes. If you're catching on later, that's okay. I'm gonna start now though. Okay, so first we are going to go over a 7-day market update, but then I'm gonna talk about overall in the market, what's the shift we're seeing, why do you keep seeing all these headlines everywhere about shifts and crashes and all that good stuff that I talk about all the time, but this is in a more condensed format so you guys have all of the things. Okay. And it is live, and I haven't done one of these in a while, so let's see how I do. So first of all, let's talk about Orange, Osceola, Seminole County in the last 7 days. So the last 7 days is always what we look at as a screenshot of what's happening right now. I literally checked these about 10 minutes ago. So this is active, Orange, Osceola, Seminole. What is happening in the last 7 days? Active, pending, and sold. Active listings, 954. Last time I did this update 2 months ago, I'm pretty sure we're at like 400. So 954 is amazing. So that's what you hear with the shift, right? So we'll talk about that in a bit. Pending, you have 1,042 pending. So obviously more going pending that are coming on the market, but that's okay. That just means things are being sold quickly, but at least there's more to sell. That's exciting. And sold, we have 948. So this is the first time in a long time that we've done these updates where we have more active than have sold in the last 7 days. Given it's only 6 more, but it's more. That's really awesome. Okay, so let's talk about days on market, the major stats that I talk about all the time on here, and then we're gonna go into why everything's shifting, really the bullet point reasons. I wanna premise, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an economist, I'm not a CPA, I'm just someone who looks at the market literally every single day. I'm the one that's making offers on the things that you hear about, and I'm the one that's accepting offers on things you're hearing about. So I'm in the know, more than your Uncle Larry is. So let me know if you can hear me too, because I have no tripod. It's propped up on a chair, so I'm hoping my mic still works. Okay, let's talk about inventory increases. Did you hear what I said? I said increase. Because for the last 2 years, every month we've seen year over year decrease from the year before, and from the months before we've been seeing decrease. This is the first month in about 2 years that we've seen an increase in inventory. And what that really means is that there's more houses on the market than there were a year ago. And that could just mean because they haven't sold, or it could just mean because more are being put on the market. So let's just look at the actual number of that. Last year, in the same month, 3,800 homes were sold. This year 3,800 was sold versus 4,000 in 2021. And that's a great sign. So you also need to know that anything over 3,000 is insane. That many selling, I had low battery, so it interrupted me. So 3,800 sold this year versus 4,000 last year. So when people say, oh my gosh, less houses are selling, oh my gosh, we're gonna crash, it's shifting, there's less things selling. Okay, it's 200 less, and anything over 3,000 is like record breaking. Last year we were in like Evel Knievel shooting out of a cannon kind of speed, and now we're more at like, okay, we're in the fast lane. You know, we're that not so great of a person in the giant pickup truck going 90 and a 70, but it's better than NASCAR. That's what I'm telling people. That is the comparison. So when you see these clickbait saying we're selling less, the market's slowing, of course it's slowing. But it's a relative slow, right? Because 90 compared to 130 is very different than the 130 compared to 20, which is what the media will tell you is happening. They're like, oh my gosh, it's not like that. It's like going from a Ferrari to a sedan in the fast lane. That's what's happening. We're not going to the school zone yet. That's not the speed we're going. So, okay, that's the inventory increase. Days on market right now is 23, just around there. Average days on market means how many days it's on the market until someone goes, boop, it's pending. What I like to call getting engaged. When the house gets engaged and it's off the market, they're not really flirting around anymore if they know what they're doing. So when the house is engaged, that ticker stops, right? And then when they get married, then it officially timestamps like, hey, that was how many days. If, let's just say you were engaged, if you were pending on a house and then you back out, the ticker starts from where it was again. So if you got engaged on day 20, you backed out of the engagement, it starts 21, 22, 23, so on and so forth. So right now, average days is 23. You might be thinking, wow, really? Because I'm seeing things for 3 days. Of course, this is an average. But there was a house that was on the market it's pending now, but it literally pended in the last 7 days. But it was on the market for 309 days. And it's not a weird skew house either. Skew houses are the ones that are like $2 million, $3 million, or they're like the mobile homes on the weird lots that are hard to, get financing for. No. This was a $350,000 house. That is bread and butter, average price point house. And it took 300 days. It could be a myriad of reasons, but all I'm saying is like things do sit if they're not put on market correctly, if there's something wrong with them, et cetera, et cetera. But average day is 23. To give you perspective, in a neutral market, which is about the 6-month inventory mark, right? And right now we're at like way below that, which is why it's a seller's market still, because seller's market is anything below 6 months of inventory. That 6-month mark though is neutral. You'll see houses sit 60 days, 100 days, and it's normal. That's not abnormal at all in a neutral market. So now we're so used to like, oh my gosh, I have to make an offer right now, which is still true in a lot of areas. So don't think from what I'm saying tonight that you're like, oh, we can sleep on it. No, some houses you can't. I have an offer in on a pool house that's close to the beach right now, and we needed to be competitive because it's in an A school district with a pool next to the beach. You think that sucker's gonna go quick? Yes. Very different than something kind of out in the boonies, that's overpriced and maybe hasn't been updated in 20 years. That's gonna sit longer than it was 3 months ago. Okay, that rant over. Moving on. Percentage of houses sold is down 7%, as I said, because it was 3,800 versus the 4,000 last year. That's about a 7% decrease. So that's exciting. So when people are like, hey, that's crazy. Oh no, it's fine. That's actually really good news because we need a more stable market. We need it to not be this crazy because it's been a crisis. Buyers are having such trouble. Like, yeah, sellers are like, oh yeah, let me rake it in. But sellers, be a little less selfish because you're still going to have a lot easier time buying now, 1. And 2, now you're going to get 5 offers instead of 50. Oh, boo-hoo, right? So this is better all around for everyone. And I'm very excited because some really lazy listing agents are now going to have to work for their paycheck. And that makes me really excited because I always worked. That's why I got really good offers. But some listing agents were like, oh, we'll just wait for it to come to us. And it was really annoying. So that aside, okay, the price increase, 25%. Do you know what that means? That means from last year, prices are up 25%. The average price point is $370 in Orlando. And when I say Orlando, that's the Orlando metro. So that includes Osceola, Seminole, some of Polk, like and Lake County even, like the major Orlando area, 25% increase in price. So that's normal too, not normal, but it's good for you to see that prices are so high now. Of course it's going to slow a little because it was like, and now it's like, okay, we're chilling out because people can't always afford that, especially with the rates. Because with the 2%, 3% rates, everyone was able to bid like crazy because their monthly payment was so low. But now that's one of the factors that is affecting the prices, affecting the speed of inventory, all those things. Moving on. I know this is a lot, so always DM me if you have any questions, and you can throw questions in the chat if you want to. So why the shift? I've mentioned a few of them, but now we're going to really dive into why is the market shifting? What is legit happening to make it shift? Not just, oh, it's because the market's going to crash. Why is the market going to crash? Why do people say that? I always ask them that when they say, oh, well, it's going to happen. And I say, how do you know? And I genuinely ask them, do you know something I don't? Because the stats that I'm looking at, the history that I'm looking at, does not indicate. The economists that I listen to on podcasts for 5 hours a day aren't saying these things. So why the shift? Number one reason, which is the reason most widespread that people know, are the interest rates. So people are really mad because right now they're around the 5.5 on average, right? And again, I'm not a lender, so I'm not telling you what your rate's going to be because gosh, people get mad at me when I say 5.5 and they get a 5.8, but that's the average right now, right? So people are getting mad at that. And I'm like, why? It's because they got really used to things. People hate change. So for the last 2 years, I only had one person ever get a 2.1 and they put a lot of money down, just to let you know. But people had from 2s to 3.5s, right? I even have a 3.5 for my house, straight up. So that was really amazing. That was an amazing time. That was unicorns and butterflies and wonderfulness. That doesn't happen all the time. The economy was being stimulated artificially by the government. It was. So if you don't know what that means, that essentially means that, oh my gosh, COVID happened and no one was able to work or to buy things or to purchase things. Supply chain was so messed up, there was nothing happening. The housing market sustains such a significant portion of the economy, and so do rates and the Federal Reserve and all that stuff. So the government was like, oh my gosh, we have to give people these good rates, essentially, to artificially give them these good rates so that we sustain this. So yeah, everyone was buying houses, everyone was refinancing, everyone was doing everything. And now all of a sudden, all the banks are like, wow, so we have like everyone on 30-year mortgages at 2.5%. How are we going to make money? One, that's a problem, but that's their problem. It's going to be okay because now they're inflating the rates and inflating everything else. The word inflate is very popular right now. So that was what was happening. So don't get mad that you didn't have a 2.5 or 3.5. It's always better to buy a house than to not buy a house. So 6.3 is the national average, like over time, over the last 40 to 50 years. I forget the exact time of that, of what that average is. But it's about 6.3 is the average interest rate. So if you have below that, you're doing good, bud. You're doing real good. And people were buying houses at 8%, 12%. It was craziness. So now having a 5.5, count your lucky stars and buy the house. But because those rates are going up, there's a few things that have happened. One, hedge funds have kind of dipped out of the market. Not totally, but a lot of them were just buying things up because they're like, oh my gosh, money's so cheap, money's so cheap. And a lot of them were buying cash, but it wasn't really cash. A lot of them have like back-end private financing that's through a different channel that just looks like cash, or could be them borrowing cash for a really high interest rate on. It's a whole complicated thing, but a lot of hedge funds can't do that anymore because they know, okay, even if I buy this house, can I resell it that quickly and get my money back? And because a lot of hedge funds are dependent on the stock market, and we all know what the stock market's doing right now. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is that a lot of investors that aren't cash, that are just normal people that are just like, hey, I want to buy an investment property. I want to buy a second home for my daughter or my vacation home. You need 20% down to do that, yes, but 80% of that house is usually financed for investors. So now a lot of those investors are like, ooh, with these interest rates, my monthly payment has gone up. I can't get the rent income to cover my mortgage payment, or they can get it to just cover it. So a lot of them are being priced out of getting good renter income from that investment. So a lot of them have also dipped out, which is normal. They're just like, hey, I'm going to hold off for a little bit because my monthly payment doesn't really balance out because prices are high. So yeah, rent is high, but the investor on the back end is also paying a bunch of stuff too, and they have money that they have to look out for. So that's the second reason. Hedge funds getting out, investors starting to dip out. Third reason, which a lot of people don't think about, was that during the 2.5, 3.5 interest rates, a lot of people that wanted to sell didn't have to sell in order to buy another property, because the majority of people have to sell before buying because all their money and all their equity is tied up in their asset. But with these interest rates, they could refinance their primary home to a really good mortgage payment. They could do a lot of crazy things that I won't get too much into. They can take money out, blah, blah, blah. But they could refinance this at a really low rate, get a lower mortgage payment, and then buy another house with a really low rate and a really low mortgage payment, and they could balance both. All of a sudden, they became investors. That was a huge thing happening. I had several sellers do that I was like, hey, you know, you called me here to talk about selling your house, but I don't think you need to. Because I'm straight up. I'll be like, no, you don't need to sell that. You should really do this. Grow your portfolio. Let's get it done. And it empowers people. So a lot of people were doing that over the last few years. They were holding both properties. Now, with those interest rates, you got to sell to buy that house, bud. A lot of them have to because it moved them out of the market for those double whammies, I guess. It's live, whatever, we're keeping going. So those are the three major reasons. So sellers can't balance both anymore. Hedge funds, investors aren't getting their ROI. And then the fourth reason is pretty obvious too, is that some buyers are backing out, and not just because they're scared. If you can buy a house, you should buy a house, always. If you can buy a second house, buy a second house, like literally always. Real estate's the best. Take it from everyone that's rich. So, but the fourth really reason is that some buyers are dipping out because they have to, because they were able to afford a $350,000 house, but with these interest rates, it's going down and down. Now they're only able to afford a $300,000 house, and with prices going up, then you also have less buying power. So those just keep, being more diametrically opposed, and thus that's the fourth major reason that the rates are affecting us. That's not the only reason that there's more inventory, the market is shifting, but that's the major reason that everyone talks about. So there you go. There's some food for thought for you. The second major reason, besides interest rates, is that there's more sellers in the market. Families don't have roots. I notice a lot of realtors being tied to investors and selling their inventory to investors. It's caused neighborhoods to be loaded with renters. It's kind of killing neighborhoods. In some ways, yes. And so a lot of my sellers, I'm not allowed to tell them like, oh, I know exactly who this is. But in the contract, a lot of them see that it's an LLC versus Brian and Susie Ramadan. They'll see the names and be like, that's a family, I want them. Not all sellers do that. I don't advise like, hey, you should do this, because that's steering them to make a decision. But I've literally heard them verbally say like, oh, I like the idea that that's a family versus an LLC. And that's why a lot of LLCs will buy in their name and then flip it to an LLC later. So yeah, that has been an impact on neighborhoods for sure. And especially the hedge funds coming into and trying to do all that, and Opendoor trying to sell a lot of things and buy a lot of things. So yeah, that's progress is what they say, but I think it's tapering out. I think there's seasons of that, and I think that it ebbs and flows. Renters do need places to rent, but I totally agree with you that, yeah, a lot of routes aren't being established because of that reason, for sure. And because Orlando in general is so transient that I think most people are just, whoo, and a lot of people aren't loyal to anything these days. So, okay, so rates, more sellers. More sellers are selling right now. One, like I said, because of all the rates, but the other reason is because it's summer. The number one season for real estate is summer. Why? I did an email blast about it last week, so if you want to know why, you can really go look at my blog post about that. But the major reason is for the obvious reason. Kids. If you got kids, moving in the summer is the easiest way to do it. You don't have to worry about schools ending. You don't have to worry about moving them during school, or it's so much easier to move in the summer. It's not pretty out, so it's really hot to move in the summer. But June and July are the two biggest months for real estate. So that's just normal. The last 2.5 years haven't really been normal, as we all say, but it's getting back to it legitimately. And one of the ways we can see that is that people are selling in the summer and more buyers are out in the summer. So some people are like, oh, summer is going to be so much easier because so many people are going to be selling. Yeah, there's also a lot more buyers, but because of those rates, it's really helping buyers out for sure. A second reason, like I said, is that they have to sell. And the third reason in that more sellers category is that a lot of people are late to the game for sellers. According to a stat, I'm pretty sure it's National Association of Realtors. I forgot to write down my source, but I promise it was legit. I'll find it later if you want me to. But compared to last year, the number of people that think it's a good time to sell this year is up 10%. I thought that was so funny, because really it should have been the opposite, right? It's still a good time to sell. And if you want to move up in house, it's always a conversation to have, and you're going to be able to get equity out of your house, and there's good offers still. But guys, like last year was like easiest time to sell in your life, right? As long as you marketed correctly and did the right things and knew what you were doing, like that was a great time because there was nothing on the market and everyone wanted to buy and the interest rates were still so low. So it's so funny to me that now people are, they're getting what they're like, oh yeah, it's a good market. It's a healthy seller's market. I'm like, yeah, bud, you should have checked it a few months ago, And it makes sense. People are behind the curve because they're not in this every day. They hear something on the news and they don't realize how quickly the market changes. It changes every day, every hour, every minute, but really you got to look month to month at the bare minimum. So yeah, that's really the third reason why there's more sellers, is that people are finally like, okay, now we're going to do it. It's like, you had 2 years. It's very funny to me. Okay, then let's talk about people are still buying, but there's more to buy. So that's what I want to say too, is that it's not like everyone's dipping out of the market. That's not the case. It's that there's just more toilet paper on the shelves to buy. So now it's not a feeding frenzy because everyone kind of got back into the flow of like, yes, let's list a house, let's sell, let's move, let's do this. We're safe, we're good. It's just getting more neutral. I also want to say cost of waiting is important too, because some people are saying, oh, well, Savannah, I'll just wait till it crashes. Still not going to happen, guys. Softening is not a crash. Like I said, going from 4,000 home sales to 3,800 is a shift. It's a downward shift, but it's still a ridiculous amount of home sales. It's still insane. So it's still going to cost you to wait. One, because the interest rates are probably going to go up a little more. We don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a lender, but they've stabilized, which is exciting. But you've seen gas prices and you've seen cost of goods and cost of supplies to build houses. New construction, guys, is insane. So if you're looking to buy a new house or even a house that was built in the last 5 years, like those prices, dog, is crazy. So cost of waiting over the lifetime of all of real estate, it's going to cost you to wait. Inflation and appreciation happen unless we literally have a downward spiral crazy like 08, which won't happen. And if you doubt me, watch the last robust market update video because I talked about supply chain and stats and a whole bunch of stuff. And I can link the video in the DM if you really want it, but it's on my YouTube channel. That's not going to happen. So just believe me or fact check me. But let's just say that appreciation goes down to the normal rate. The economists are really saying it's going to be around 5% appreciation from this year to 2023. That's really good. Last year in Orlando, it was 19 to 30%, depending on your zip code, which was insanity, which is why the prices are up 25%. Literally, my stat is proven right there because prices were up 25%. Appreciation happened 19 to 30%. So even if it cuts in half in Orlando, let's go to 10%, right? But I'll just give you the 5. I'll say, oh, wow, it's really bad. It's going to 5%. Do you know what that is over a year? Because on a $500,000 house, which is what a lot of people are moving up in house to, that's $25,000 that the price is going to go up. Not to mention the fact that you're going to have spent money on rent or living in a house you don't like now if you want to move up in house. So cost of waiting is a real thing, regardless of if it's a neutral market or a crazy seller's market. Neutral market, banking on 5% is a solid bet. That's a good bet. So waiting a year is going to cost you. Waiting a few months is going to cost you, especially because people are still bidding. And you know how I said that sellers are behind the curve on what needs to happen, and so they think now is the good time? Buyers are still in the same mentality too of, I have to bid. So prices are still going to be up there, even if it's easier to get offers accepted. So I want to talk about that. There's a question in the chat. Do we still have out-of-state buyers, and will that hold prices high in Florida? Yes and yes. There is not as much of an impetus anymore, right? That's the word. Opposite of exodus is impetus. Yeah, I think I'm right. So people aren't leaving because that's not been really a case. It was 7 to 1 is usually the ratio in Florida for the last 2 years of how many people are coming. 7 versus leaving. 1. Craziness. We still do have people trickling in, but it's not the droves that we were seeing over the last 2 years. I think people have really made their way down in that mass impetus, if that's the right word. So we were seeing like 1,500 people a week move to Florida. Sorry, I flipped the stats. It's 1,000 people a day moving to Florida, general Florida, and 1,500 people a week moving to central Florida. That's over the last 2 years. That's been the general stat. We're not seeing as much now. I don't have the exact stat. I will see if I can find one. But I've felt it because my buyers from out of state have trickled. My coworkers' buyers from out of state have trickled. When I look at my referral network, I literally have a map of over like 100,000 agents in the country and where things are coming from. It's trickled. It's still happening as people move, people get new jobs, obviously, and people want to be in Florida. But the mass amount of people, the reason people are moving here is because of, all the COVID stuff, all this stuff happening, the fact they're like, oh, well, I'm stuck in my house, hate where I live, let's go somewhere I like. That really happened over the last 2 years. They're still trickling, like I said, but it's not as crazy. Will it keep prices high here, though? I mean, yeah, it's Florida. You know what I mean? Like, we're now the top most expensive state in the country. And you think, oh, well, California has higher price points. Yeah, but we've skyrocketed more than them. And Miami is the most expensive city in the country. It's higher than San Francisco. So people are coming here. We have so much to offer here, especially job growth. So as much as you think, oh, there's, people aren't working. Well, there's a lot of jobs, though. There's a lot of jobs. We're number 1 right now ranked from, oh my gosh, I just blanked on the name. Marcus and Millchap. I got it back. They're one of the top commercial brokers in Florida, and they have some satellite campuses and stuff. They named Orlando, Florida, the top in the United States for commercial real estate. Us and Vegas. I guess Vegas is popping too. So go invest there too if you need another state to invest in. If you want to diversify, we can talk about that. I know a really good agent in Vegas. What was I talking about? Oh, but we've essentially seen the commercial growth here, so people are coming here for jobs. So I think more people are coming here for jobs more than ideologies and moral and lifestyle things now, to be honest with you. That's what I've seen. But yeah, prices will stay high here because it's Florida. I mean, that's just what it is. And yeah, I think that answered that. Tell me if I answered it, if you want me to expound more. But yeah, people are still moving here, and especially with Disney relocating here, that's over a next 5-year plan. People thought that already happened. It got announced like a year ago, but it's happening trickling over 5 years. So that's going to be insane with all the Disney execs coming. There's like 2,000 of them. So people are like, oh, they're going to Lake Nona. Not all of them. People are okay with a 30-minute commute coming from California. Stuff like that. People are relocating here for commercial purposes because of the income tax thing, because our taxes are cheaper, because DeSantis is doing some things to incentivize them. So yeah, a lot of my friends have been calling me that left Florida trying to get back. What else was I going to talk about? I think that was really it. Okay, so what do you need to know? Let's wrap it all up, essentially. For sellers, you need to know that you really need to listen to your agent when they talk about pricing. I think over the last 2 years, I've had to have a lot of educating conversations with my sellers saying, hey, I know you think that we should price way over. I've never priced over. I've never had a bad appraisal on one of my listings. There was 1 to 2.5 years ago, but it was weird. The appraiser was new and he sassed me, and it was a whole thing. It only came in like 5,000 below. It was a very annoying time. That's the only time. Everything else has been fine because my pricing works. The reason that I get ridiculous amounts over is because you price right. Because in buyers' minds, they're already bidding over, so you need to price it right. That's more important now than ever. Because if they see everything on the market, and there's a lot more on the market now, so there's going to be less buyers biting at your toilet paper. You know what I'm saying? Less feeding frenzy on your house because they have 10 other houses to go to. Because like I said, we're at 954 active. We were at 400 a few months ago, the last 2 years. So it's literally about over double what we've been seeing. So buyers are like, wow, okay, now I have some options. That doesn't mean that they can low bid you on your first day on the market. That's not what it means. But it does mean that, hey, you might only get 5 offers instead of 15. You might only get 3 offers, maybe one of them's cash. But I always break down, depending on your area, what you need to price at, obviously, and what kind of financing has been done in your area. Because if you're like, hey, let's just price it, we'll get a cash offer. I'm like, hey, well, only 1% have been cash offers in your neighborhood. You're going to have to rely on this. It's all about strategy. But what you need to know, sellers, is that marketing and pricing is more important than ever. So make sure you hire a listing agent that's going to do their job. Because I think over the last 2 years, people have just hired ridiculous people. Not going to name names, obviously, but it's just like they don't work. They're not getting up every day going, okay, I need to prospect for this seller, because they've just sat back. Of course, the upfront marketing is a lot, but I've worked for all my sellers. So it's okay, rant over, I'm talking too long. So buyers, what you need to know is that you have more of a chance. That's really the whole thing. You obviously have those higher rates, but your appreciation is still there. You're still, if you buy right now, and let's just say you have to sell next year because of any life circumstance, you're still going to probably come out with a profit. And there's not a lot of markets in history that you can say after a year that you're going to profit, right? You could have broken even at some points, but it's hard to make a profit after owning something for a year if you haven't put a bunch of money into it. So it's still a great time. And like I say, it's if you're ready to buy or you're ready to sell, that's the good time to buy or sell. It really doesn't matter what the market's doing. If you have to make a move, you just need to strategize that move properly with a professional. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, that's really it. This was 28 minutes and I told my husband it would be 10. So I need to go because we have to go get dinner, but thanks for joining. If you have any more questions, I'll stay on for 30 seconds and just talk because that's what I do. But I'm so glad you guys joined. There was a few people on today and that makes me really happy because then I'm not talking to myself in my office. So this is my bookshelf. It's always here with me. I'm Savannah. I'm with Keller Williams. If I didn't say that, I'm pretty sure I have to legitimately say that legally. Not an attorney, not a CPA, not a lender, just a licensed Florida realtor who loves her job and does it all the time.